Welcome to The Focused View, the podcast for eye care professionals across Australia. Brought to you by Opticare. In each episode, we bring together leading eye care, optical and business professionals to share valuable insights, practical tips, and the latest trends shaping the optical business landscape. I'm your host, Michael Nasser, and together we'll explore innovative strategies for practice growth, patient care, and business success in the eye care industry. Whether you're starting your career, managing a practice, or just looking to stay ahead of the field, The Focused View is your source for inspiration and knowledge. Today we're continuing our Elevate Your Practice series with Joanne Scott-Dostine, Commercial Manager at Opticare, where we'll be talking about one of the biggest untapped opportunities in optometry, sunglasses. Sunglasses aren't just a style statement. They play a vital role in protecting eye health and enhancing visual comfort. With high rates of UV-related conditions in Australia, integrating sunglasses into your practice is more important than ever. In this episode, we'll explore how to make sunglasses a natural part of patient interactions, how to optimize your product mix, and the best strategies for merchandising and marketing to drive both patient awareness and practice revenue. If you're looking for a practical way to strengthen your sunglass offering and make them a bigger part of your business, this episode is packed with actionable insights. So let's get into it. Joanne, welcome back to the show. It's been a while, but very excited to have you on and to be discussing today's topic.
It has been a while, and we did try and do this at one of the road shows, but everyone was quite excited and we had a lot of background noise, so we're re-recording, which is, it's good. No, don't have the live audience, but, still get the information.
Yeah, no, it was something that we had to go at the Brisbane OptiPro roadshow event, and the acoustics of the room weren't really conducive to a good recording, so the clarity wasn't that good. So we're redoing it now, obviously, and really excited about today's topic and getting into it. It's a topic I feel that is, I wouldn't say controversial is the right word, but I guess it's one of those areas that we neglect. And as a result, I feel like there might be some insights out of today's conversation that people aren't necessarily always thinking about, and hopefully we can highlight the importance of this particular product in store and, the aim of allowing stores to really get the most out of it. So sunglasses and integrating them into our optometry practices. Why are sunglasses such a significant opportunity for optometry practices in Australia, in your opinion?
I think that if we go back to that where you opened up and you said that it's probably something that people don't really think about. We've not really, done a lot with. I think it's a very interesting thing. I think as the industry changes and as we move through that, clinical sales thing, I think some people feel that sunglasses are a little bit more on the sales side, and that's probably part of it. I think, one of my thoughts has always been that customers buy sunglasses. We don't sell them because we don't tend to do a lot with people who come in just to buy Sunnies. But the opportunity is huge. I mean, look, I think it's something that we should be really considering. I have also worked at Cancer Council, so I'm a bit of a driver in this area. Having worked at Cancer Council, there's a lot of terrible stats in Australia that we need to consider when it comes to, the sun. So I think the last report I saw, we were about 13 times the world average for skin cancer rates. They say that 2 out of every 3 in Australia will get diagnosed with some type of skin cancer in their lifetime. The numbers are double for men than are for women in general. Men have a little bit more skin exposed in general, if we're, just pushing it back to men and women to make it simple. And at the moment, we probably only do, if I look at, when I'm doing coaching and when I look at stats and having a look at a lot of practices, when you actually look at the rate of prescription sunglasses that a practice sells, generally it sits around that 10 to 15%. So essentially it's telling us that up to 90% of people buying prescription glasses are wearing plaino Sunnies. Now, for some of those people, that's fine because they might only be buying reading glasses or they might be buying, glasses for their computer. But there's a high percentage now that are using, progressives. And if we're only getting that low rate, that means we've got a high rate. The other reason I think it's really important is in general when an optometrist is looking at the health of the eye, a lot of the things that they look at are actually an impact as a result from UV. So if you consider cataracts, I think cataract surgery is still the number 1 elective surgery in Australia. So it's a big thing in Australia. Pterygiums are fairly big because it's to do with the sun, the surf, sand, that sort of the way we live. About 1% of people, I think they say, will have a pterygium. And then when it comes to skin cancer, about 10% of skin cancers are around the eye. They're to do with the eye. It's a really sensitive part of our skin. And so about 10% of it sits around there. So the reasons why we should do it, I think they're laid out in front of us. It's pretty simple.
And I think what you've highlighted there is, in our industry, obviously, you mentioned earlier, there's a little bit of a conflict between, clinical and retail, and Sunnies are perhaps seen a little bit more as a retail. But mentioning what you've mentioned there and going through, the actual health risks associated with not wearing Sunnies, and knowing that, your patients of a store have got progressives, and do they have a pair of Sunnies as well that is perhaps scripted? I feel like that may be the link that one would need to make to sort of then incorporate that into their store and perhaps make it more of an offering. So I guess if we're thinking about that and how we can integrate it into a practice, if it isn't already in there, how can a practice make sunglasses a standard part of their workflow?
Oh, there's lots of ways you can do it. I think some of the changes that have happened even in the testing options that we have. So if you think about people getting their license these days, and I know in New South Wales, Service Australia sent out a letter for people when they were getting their licenses to say that you can go to an optometrist and have your eyes tested. I think that optoms were thrown in the deep end a little bit. They weren't consulted. They didn't know what was happening. But a lot of people come in to get license checks these days. And one of the things with license checks is making sure that their acuity is good enough to be on the road. And if we're only considering clear glasses and we're not considering the sunglasses, it could be a little bit of an issue. The other thing that's interesting is that they actually, when you look at the rate that people get new glasses, generally, I think it's still around every 2.5 to 3 years is the average in Australia. But people update their clear glasses all the time. When you actually are in a practice and you look at the sunglasses, often it's only every second or third trip that they will do those Sunnies. So sometimes that script is even older. So when you're considering a license, it's an issue. I think the other thing to consider around licensing is when we actually are driving and all the things that we have to do in the car, about 80% or more of what you rely on the car to make all your decisions and to do everything you do is visual. So to try not to have an accident, to be watching everything on the road, looking at the dash, everything you do, it's reliant on your eyes. So good vision is really good. So how do we integrate it? I think you've got to make it a focus. So the stores that do it really well will make sure that when somebody rings up to make an appointment, when they say the line, bring in your old glasses so we can have a look at them, they will also say, bring in your sunglasses. Whether they are prescription or not, bring them in. Because the aim of this is not just about prescription, it's actually about protection to try and eliminate some of the things that are happening. They need to look at what they're wearing when they come in, make it part of when they're looking at the glasses. They actually look over the Sunnies to see if they actually are a good quality sunglass. Are they damaged? Are they script? Aren't they? If they've got a high enough script, talk to them about it. They need to consider, the license. I think if you make it so that it's part of that, you put it on your welcome to practice form, so you ask them about your sunglasses. In the room, the optometrist actually says to somebody when they're looking, they might be doing an anterior photo, they might be having, a deeper look to say, I'm actually going to look to see if I can see any sun damage as well. As part of that last 5-minute prescribing conversation, as I call it, one of the things that they can do is say, let's talk about what I found when I looked for sun damage. And you can go one or two ways. You can say, I've actually seen a little bit of a change in there. So I feel like we need to make sure that you've got some good Sunnies. Or you can say, good news is I actually, from my baseline and what I'm looking at the moment, it looks pretty good in there. So let's make sure you've got good Sunnies so we can try and keep that change to a minimum. So each time you come in, we can try and keep it down by making sure you've got good Sunnies now. So either way, you can have a conversation about sunglasses. So I think it's in every part. They can market it, have information on their website, make sure they've got information within the practice. I've seen some practices that actually have the 5 categories listed so people actually know what the 0 to 4 means, when people are actually looking at sunglasses. So they actually have it out there to make it easy. They have information about, sunglasses. They have guides and things. So the optometrist will actually prescribe a pair with every patient that's in there. Doesn't mean people have to get them, but they talk about, why it's important. They talk about the stats. So just making it a focus and making it part of what you do would be the best way to bring it in.
Yeah. And how should practices balance prescription against non-prescription sunglass offerings? We're obviously speaking a lot about, the prescription Sunnies. I feel like there's a clear link there to the clinical side and making sure that, patients are having the best vision and the best protection of their eyes. With regards to non-prescription sunglasses, this is, I guess, a little bit more challenging, in this day and age with online options and things like that. How do you handle that, and what suggestions would you have for a practice in balancing the two?
I think that generally in most practices, if they don't have a focus on it, they tend to have mostly RXable Sunnies because that's what they're dealing with. So then if somebody comes in and they're buying Plano, it's all nice and easy because it doesn't matter whether you get script or Plano. I think the big issue with a lot of them is making sure that the team understand prescription versus base curve versus, what you can cut out versus what you can do when it comes to the frame component and the curve of the frame, as opposed to just being able to do any script. So I think there's a lot more work involved. If you want to do Plano, you can have all sorts of Sunnies in there, but then you've also got to be sure that you're telling the right people the right things. So when you're doing somebody with prescription, you've got to know which ones are scriptable, which ones aren't. So you might want to put a little sticker on them. But it also helps you with your contact lens wearers because they actually have more sensitive eyes. Eyes water a little bit and they need Plano Sunnies as well as prescription Sunnies. So if you don't have them, you're sending them somewhere else. And that somewhere else might not just be a sunglass shop. It might be another optical shop. And then, you're pushing them into the arms of somebody else. So I feel like it's about having the right mix. It's about having good understanding by the team, making sure everyone's trained, some way of recognising what ones can be used for script, some way of recognising when you have to go to a grind or when the higher base curve can become an issue once you get over a certain script. Yeah. So you've got to set all that up to make sure you can do both quite well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the prescription side, as you said, there might be a little more of a need of the technical understanding to incorporate that. Yeah. And you've mentioned the team and training. So what essential training do you think staff should receive on sunglasses, and where's the best place for that to happen?
I think that there's some basics. I know when I've talked to new people in the industry about the difference, if they understand the difference between tinting a lens and a polarized lens, a lot of them can't tell you the difference and they don't know what the difference is, and they often use the same wording with the patient. So the patient thinks that both will reduce glare when usually polarized is for glare and tinting is to reduce the brightness, but it's not for the glare. So I think a good understanding of that, a good understanding of at what point in a script do you need to start thinking about base curve in particular. I mean, in all scripts you should, even in a low 050. I mean, if you go to an 8 base Sunny and they're used to wearing like a 1 or a 2 base frame and they're sensitive, they'll notice it. But once you start to get to that -2 and higher, it becomes an issue because you're not just thinking about, the curve for the optics. You're actually thinking about how much thicker the lens becomes because it's not in its natural form of a flatter front curve, with the script round on the back. It actually ends up being, curved here with extra curve here, and you have a lot more thickness in it. So understanding that, bigger frames for plus wearers, how much weight you're going to have, how much thicker it's going to be in the center. So I think that there's components of the prescription, understanding that, the difference between tinting and polarizing, understanding base curves as well, and understanding optics and how the difference can be. Because, it can be quite common. It's not every patient, but it can be quite common that somebody can have a pair of clear progressives and a pair of sunglass progressives and say that one of them they feel better in, even though you might have the same lens in there. And that often is because of the base curve, or it's because of, the size of the frame. It can be to do with, the tint. There's a few things that can impact them. So I think there's got to be a good understanding, good training if you want to work well in prescription sunglass world.
And it sounds like if there's a store out there that needs training or is seeking training, their lens lab would probably be the best people to contact in this regard.
Yeah, great starting point. I think a lot of the sunglass suppliers, if they do frames and Sunnies and they've been around for a while, they generally have an idea about their base curves of their Sunnies, and they can give you a bit of guidance. When it comes to, understanding lens options and what you can use, because there are specialty lenses out there for sunglasses, then I would go to your lens company. But when it comes to things like, it's really interesting now, the push on colour and what colours are used for. So a lot of practices will know, FL41s that you use for migraine sufferers and other, eye conditions. If you go to, and I'm not trying to plug one brand, it's just that I know that they do this, but I know a brand like a Maui Gym actually have training on their website and they tell you what the different colours are good for. So if somebody goes on and does training with them, they actually have a really good understanding of what each colour has been introduced for and what that does, for the eye conditions and how it will help different people. So I think the simplification of colour is things like knowing that if you go more for an amber brown, it's good for contrast. So if there's a golfer, they want to be able to see the white ball on the green grass, in contrast to the blue sky, it will make it stand out. But if you've got somebody who's outdoors most of the time, has a job where they don't want that colour change, they want something very neutral, then you usually go for grey or the G15 green grey. They're the most neutral colours on the eye. They won't distort colours. They'll just dull everything down and make it, softer. The light won't be as bright. So understanding colour is important, but a lot of the time the labs can tell you that, your lens suppliers, and some of the sunglass suppliers will actually have training for that for you as well.
Sounds like there's a heap of people around, so just need to reach out and and ask some questions. Yeah. I guess if this is now something that a store is starting to incorporate, visibility within the store and presentation within the store in the sunglass, area is important. And do you have any suggestions there, or any ways that a store could improve that, or if they're looking to review what they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think that in a lot of practices, I think the sunglass area is probably not the area that they concentrate on the most. So if there's going to be gaps, often it's in the sunglass area. So you want to make sure that you've got, the stock filled, because it has to look good. You want to consider how you merchandise it. And there's so many ways you can do sunglasses. For a lot of brands, they like to have their brand together, especially if they're a well-known brand and they're known for their lens and their frame designs, because they like to show, a collection. But for some practices, when you're doing a bit of a mix and you've got a mixture of age groups, you need a mixture of price points, you need a mixture of options between prescription and plano, you can actually consider things like displaying it by frame colour or even lens colour, because that actually makes things look really nice as well, having the differences in the colours showing up quite well. So you can look at that. You can actually look at things like your demographics as well. It's good to understand not just the patients that you are seeing and how they relate to the census and demographics, but also the general public in the area, because you might attract people because you're known for something when it comes to prescription, but plano is very different. Plano can often be just an off-the-cuff buy. It can be somebody just walking by because you've got a good display in your window. They might not normally go into an optometrist and they might come in. And that demographic might be a little bit different to the demographic you're doing prescription glasses with. So consider your local area. I'd have a look at who the competition is. So if you're getting into plano, also look at the competition, see what they've got on display, see what brands they're doing, see how they do it, because you really want to have a little bit of a point of difference, and you don't really want to have the same as what other people have, but you also want to attract the people that are going to those other stores. So you've got to have that little bit of the crossover. So the places that will sell it, look, surf shops do it, other optometrists do it, you have sunglass shops these days, chemists have it, servos have it. There's lots of little places that have, your everyday, sunglasses. Even a lot of the brands now, you can go into Sports Girl, you can go into Suzanne's, you can go into all these places that are actually have their own branded sunglasses now as well within the store. So there's a lot of options out there. So I think you just got to think about the prescription patient you're seeing, make sure you've got what you need for them, but then have a little think. If you're going to do some extra pieces in there, you're going to do a bit of display in the window so people can see it. You're actually in a good position. You might be a coastal store. You might be close to like sports places where there's kids playing sports and the parents are around a lot. You might be, near, really cool clothing stores or cafes where people are going to see you. Then you might want to actually look at what that mix looks like and put a little bit of difference in the plano in there as well.
Yeah. And so you mentioned there a little bit about how important, I guess, the merchandising plays in, the presentation of the sunglass sales or sunglass offerings within stores. And maybe you want to speak that a little bit more, but I guess also as an add-on to merchandising, stock management when it comes to Sunnies, obviously you're going to treat that differently to, your optical frames. So I guess if you can touch on that as well and provide any tips for stores with regards to merchandising and also then, how you manage your stock when it comes to sunglasses.
Yeah, sunglasses is actually completely different to frames. So generally from about mid New South Wales, if you cut across Australia and work your way down, probably selling sunglasses in 3 to 4 months of the year in what we call high season, which is generally summer. for a number of reasons. Number one, it's really bright and sunny outside. It's a bit warmer outside. And generally that's when practices get their new season stock and they promote it. So that's generally what they do. But when you actually cut that line and you go north, we're talking about more tropical zones, they actually need sunnies year round. The people from the south go there in winter to have holidays because it's still warm up there. So they actually need something a little bit different. So they would actually be looking at their sunglasses a little bit differently to the people in the south if you're going in the traditional way. But if you make this a focus, you should be thinking about having sunnies year round. The main differences are that generally they change styling each year. You don't actually get to rotate as much generally because it's about fashion and style. It's not the same as the way frames come where they can actually have a few new frames here and there across the year. They tend to have a bit of an influx generally around August each year and then, sometime the next year. So you want to make sure that your numbers are tight, that you don't have too much backup because you don't want to be left with stock. You've got to make sure that you are covering the area that you're actually trying to engage with sunglasses, and then just make sure that you work well with your suppliers in it, because you've got a good relationship and you're buying regularly and you use a couple of good suppliers, they're more likely to help you do a bit of rotation within the high season. But generally you want to ramp up because you'll probably sell a lot more across that, November, December, Jan time as well, even just in the Plano market, especially if you're in an area that's a bit more touristy. I mean, I live up near Newcastle, and I'm sort of all around Central Coast of Newcastle. So people come up here on weekends. We get a lot more tourists coming up, through the summer season. So there's more likelihood a coastal optometrist up here will have somebody that's left their sunnies at home and will want to go and buy some Plano sunnies. So opportunity there would be different to, let's take the foot of the mountains in New South Wales, where it's quite a little bit cooler. And generally people are going to be looking at more to do with their prescription options, not so much about, they're out for the day going to the beach and they've left their sunnies at home. So it's a different need. So I think you got to merchandise and work on how you manage your stock based on your location, based on the needs, based on your demographics. You got to look at all of that.
Yeah. At the top of the podcast, you mentioned some of the stats associated with the eye health risks with sun exposure. I think part of a challenge for a store would be building awareness for this type of information, so that you kind of generate a bit of a need for why a patient or a potential patient or client will be considering sunnies and why it's important for them. So what ideas do you have with regards to how practice can create more awareness about UV protection in general, and obviously the protection that sunglasses do provide?
For everyone who is having their eyes tested, it has to be built into the customer journey. So I would be sitting back and looking at my customer journey from where to go, from, the first impression to, the lasting impression. So right from when you actually, they first engage with you, whether it's on your website, through social media, they've walked past your store, they've heard about you from somebody, they've walked in and seen you. How can you promote sunglasses in all those areas so that they're aware that you have sunglasses? So that would be the first thing. Then when they come in for their test, and you're doing that welcome, you're getting them to complete a form, you make sure you have something on there about sunglasses. So you would say, do you wear prescription sunglasses? Just ask the question. Then when they go in the room and they're having their eyes tested, then the optometrist should be talking about, well, I'm going to actually have a look to see if I can see any changes in the eye. They would actually look and see the last time they had their sunglasses updated, their prescription ones, if they have them. If they're going for a license check, they would actually consider the last time they did their sunglasses and make sure that they're correct for their sunglasses. So all those little touch points within the room, there's lots of opportunity. They would look at things like, if you on your welcome to practice, you have information about, do they play sports? Do they have hobbies? Do they have kids that they might be running around with kids on the weekend going to sports fields? Have they mentioned that they're going on a skiing holiday? Have they mentioned that they're going on a cruise? All those little pieces add up to where you can actually talk about sunglasses, because they need sunglasses for all of those things. So I think that active listening is really important, and looking at their welcome to practice. At the end of the consult, when you're doing that lovely prescribing conversation of, today, based on my findings, based on what you've told me, this is what you need. So today I am prescribing this, and I'm also prescribing sunglasses because of this. So giving really good information at the end, so they actually go out knowing that sunglasses are very important. In the handover to the dispenser, whether you sit them down, they come in the room, you do it out the front, it's always good to say to the dispenser or, the optical assistant to say, today Mrs. Jones is updating her Clear Bear, but we also want to talk about getting a good pair of prescription sunglasses because we need to get them happening as well. Can you show both for me today? And can you talk about tint options based on this? And might say she likes to walk every day at, sunrise and sunset, or she's in the car a lot, but it's the middle of the day. Specifics that will be whether it will help you understand, should you do polarized, should you do tinted, what sort of colouring should you do, what intensity should you do, so that the dispenser or the optical assistant has information on how they can actually help. Then out in the main area, the retail area, having reference to sunglasses. So, yeah, you got them on display, but do you actually have something that says, did you know that we can make prescription sunglasses for you? Surprisingly, a lot of people still feel they don't know that when you talk to them. They actually don't think they can get their prescription, especially if they've got a higher prescription, in a pair of sunglasses. So having information that's around there, having it, on your website. If you've got a TV in the waiting area, if you've got brochures in the waiting area, make sure you've got something relating to sunglasses in all of them. If it's going to be a focus for your store, say it's a focus. When somebody is actually looking up on your website to say, what are the next steps? What do I need to do once I book my eye test? Say on there, one of our focuses is sunglasses. We want to make sure that in the environment of Australia with the higher cancer rates, that we're trying to protect you as much as we can. Put that information there. Tell them why you will actually look at sunglasses. Tell them why you want them to bring them in. And then at the end of the consult, they'll understand why you're talking about sunglasses. So you have to actually look at every one of those customer journey points and the touch points and all of the opportunity you have to actually show that sunglasses are your focus. It's not about just making money and making a sale. It's about another way of protecting. It's another clinical need that you have in your practice, just like you would if you're doing contact lenses, just like you would with dry eyes or with myopia management. Sunglasses is another one that you can actually put into the list of what you're actually looking at and you focus on.
And I think there's a bit of a not a mindset shift, but with how a store might approach this. It's about providing options and knowing that this is a particular option that is available to patients to protect their eyes. As a practice, it's sort of an obligation, I believe you should have, that you're at least informing and educating your community about that, and that if they do need that solution, that you can provide that for them because it comes as part of a comprehensive eye examination, eye assessment, and a solution to any issues that they may be having or may not be having, but avoiding, I guess. So having that awareness and building that through the practice, I think, from your marketing, and we'll speak about some marketing, some sales strategies a bit later on, but then through your client journey is pretty important.
Yeah, I think do that. I think you mentioned obligation. I think what's really an interesting thing I've started to see when I see training that's happening out there through, and I'm not just talking about the training organisations that do dispensing, I'm talking about, people in other, groups that train people and do things. I've actually heard them referencing two things. One of them is sunglasses and one of them is high index lenses for protection. So I've actually heard somebody training and saying that anytime you have a person that is a truck driver, a rep on the road, somebody is driving, more than a certain amount of hours every day, they want to be safe with their family, why are you not giving them a high index lens? What happens if they have a car accident? What happens to, our duty of care of, considering safety when it comes to, glasses in the car? So the same can be said about sunglasses. I've heard them say, at what stage will it start to come back on us as, the people in the industry, because we didn't tell people to wear sunglasses.
Yeah.
And they've ended up, with an issue around the eye because they weren't protecting their eyes. I mean, if they're not wearing clear glasses, which give them some UV protection anyway, and they're walking around and they're not wearing sunglasses, we're really, at what point is it our duty of care as part of our clinical care to ensure that we're actually giving that advice? So it's a very interesting thing that you said about, the obligation is what's our duty of care around sunglasses and providing that as a clinical, preventative option if we can, or ongoing care option. So it's an interesting thing to think about.
And knowing that the store, and the practice is that it should be that, and again, this is just an opinion of mine, should be the leader when it comes to these types of matters.
Yeah.
And creating that awareness within the community, in particular, in the community that practice serves. Have you seen any, or are you aware of any partnerships or community engagements that, that have worked when it comes to promoting sunglasses and I guess general eye related matters with regards to, outdoors and the instances where sunglasses can help?
I feel like it's a little bit more around your local area marketing pieces, because I think it comes in pockets of what you can do. I know years back I was working at Provision, and there was we were talking about driving, and, because I mentioned before about, 80% of our decisions are because of what we see, right, in the car. But if you're actually marketing around sunglasses and vision, why wouldn't you do, think really outside the box? Why wouldn't you do things like, you've got local service, New South Wales, RTA as they used to be called, that are doing driver's license tests all the time. Why wouldn't you go in and talk to them about, what your focus is and why you would be the perfect place for them to send people to? Why wouldn't you go to the local cancer clinic, the local place that actually checks people's skin for cancer, the local GPs that specialise in that stuff, and tell them that you have a focus on, wearing sunglasses to help protect vision? Why wouldn't you, when you're trying to talk to the local schools and nurses, talk to them about the fact that you actually have a focus on sunglasses? So, and that's a twofold thing. It's about general care, but it's also at the age of around 16, kids start to want to drive. They start to get to the age where they're actually going to get their L's. So why wouldn't we embed that into them from a young age so that they're actually protecting their eyes? I think coming from Cancer Council, it's very interesting in Australia that about 85% of schools up until about end of preschool and into primary school have to be SunSmart. Now, that's an accreditation that Cancer Council worked on with the government, which means that no hat, no play. It means the hat has to have a certain brim size. It means the clothing in the school to be accredited has a certain UV protection. It means they provide sunscreen for kids that are going to go and play in the playground. Yet we hit high school and we just go, off you go, and we don't do it anymore. And then kids just get out of the habit of doing all that stuff. They start to wear caps. Caps don't protect the back of your neck. They don't protect the top of your ears where a lot of skin cancers are. They're not big enough always to do here because of the way we wear them. Half the time we wear them back. We don't wear them forward. We wear them on the side. So why aren't we, doing things like that and considering different things outside of the box to do it? But even, collaborations, go and talk to the local fashion store. Yeah. Give them some Sunnies to put into their window for, looks. Talk to them about doing fashion events. I mean, I worked in ladies' fashion where we used to do once a quarter, we would do a night for the ladies, and we would get some of our customers to be the fashion model. So we'd use real ladies, and we would go around to all the stores that were local to us, and we would get accessories. We would get Sunnies. We would actually put them into, bags, their information. We would do cross promotions. We would get giveaways and have, lucky door prizes. And we would actually help as a community to grow the other stores around by actually talking and cross promoting. So that's another way you could do it, is just consider the stores that are in your area and get in and see those people and talk to them about it. Go to the pharmacist.
You've touched on some marketing tactics there, and that was going to be my next question with regards to, what would a store do with regards to marketing and some tactics or strategies in that regard? Obviously, you've mentioned there collaborations and finding local businesses, fashion-oriented stores and the like. I guess, is there anything else that you would recommend or suggest when it comes to starting to promote and market this as a store, as something that you now focus on?
I think that one way I would suggest is when you look at socials, so social media, reels are really important. People love a good reel, a good video. But you look at social media, and if practices go and have a look at the engagement rate and look at the likes, people generally will click and like on the real stuff. The stuff that's about the patients, the stuff that's about the team, not the stuff that's about the brand. So you can put a brand image up, and that's nice because you need to do that from time to time. Got a new brand, da-da-da. But if you actually have a team member instead that takes pictures with those sunglasses on and said, got this new brand in, how good do these look? They go to coffee. If they go and have coffee every morning and they go to one of the local coffee places, they tag them into that and they wear a different sunglass every day and have an image with it, or they actually have it sitting next to their cup of coffee and they're promoting sunglasses they're wearing and they're promoting, the local cafe. Good way to do it. If the team's out and about doing an event, get them all to put their sunnies on. We live and breathe this. We don't just talk about sunglass protection. We don't just have it as a focus in our store. We actually live and breathe it. Here's our team out together. We've all got our sunnies on today. We've all put our sunscreen on this morning. We've got our hats on. we've all got our Sunnies on. So get people out and about from the team and do it. If you've got somebody picking up a great pair of, Sunnies that look fantastic, ask, do you mind if we take your picture? Do you mind if we put it up on social media? You should be doing that regularly to try and get lots of really good real people that you're doing. But the team is a really cool one because you can actually, cross-promote across different places within your community. You can tell a little bit of a story. You can showcase new brands, but do it on the people that are within your store because people are going to engage with them. You're going to get 10 times more likes if you're in the local cafe and you've got the receptionist who looks fantastic in every sunny wearing a pair of Sunnies and she's hashtagging the supplier and she's out there, and all of her customer base see her. You're more likely to pull in a different crowd than you normally get as well that see that you've got Sunnies.
And if we're looking out at the sales side of it and maybe some strategies or tactics that we can incorporate to promote the sales, obviously, when I say that, I don't mean it in a bad way, selling it, but, if we're looking at how we can promote the service, and we've obviously mentioned a few points as to why we believe it's beneficial that this is to be done, and practices should hopefully take that on board. So when it comes to that particular sale component, how can maybe bundling or second pair offers, or are there any other, tips or strategies that you have in that regard that a store can incorporate into their offering to increase sales in this regard?
Yeah, you can do second pairs. You can use it as a conversion tool. So if you do it on the same day, you'll get, this reduction on the price. If you come back within a month, you get this. After that, it goes back to standard price. You can do promotions where you actually upgrade everyone who wants it or needs it to polarization, at different times throughout the year. You can do packages to simplify it. Set up a few packages where you offer either tinted or polarized, and it's just in single vision, grind, maybe a base progressive, maybe a better progressive. Just make it really simple so you have options there. Looking at the stats, because as I said, when people do look at it, generally they are quite surprised to see, because on all of the systems that we have, there's generally something that says either sunglass with prescription or with lens, or it says prescription sunglasses on the different reports. It shows you the percentage that you do. I do see that some people actually then have a bit of a percentage around, a photochromatic option. But if you're being serious about sunglasses, photochromatic is it's a go-between pair of glasses, is what I would say, because you get in the car, they don't go dark. You do have some that are extra active, but they still don't go really dark in the car. And if you're really quite light sensitive, they're not going to be what you need. You need a proper pair of Sunnies. So I think if you really look at your stats, just look at that prescription amount, see what the opportunity is. And then, between the whole team, talk about all the different, touch points and where you can add it in and the way you can look at the changes. Because look, some people hate KPIs. We've talked about this before. Numbers don't lie, but they are just the result of the behaviours that you have within the practice. Mm-hmm. So if you change a behaviour, and that behaviour is, I now talk about sunglasses at the end of every consult that I do as an optometrist, the result of seeing how effective that is and how well you do it is, has my sunglass sales gone up on my KPI report? Am I seeing my percentage of prescription sunglasses is higher than it used to be? I know it's working because I can see those numbers. Am I seeing that I'm doing more polarized than I used to do when I used to do just tints, because I now understand the need for polarization compared to the need for tinting, so I can see those numbers. So KPIs are not always about, whipping and saying, this is our result, we want this to be better, and I want you to get this number. Sometimes they're just a way of saying, is what I'm doing successful? Is the behavior that I'm changing to giving me a result that I actually wanted, or isn't it? So if I'm not seeing change in the KPI numbers, what is it that's not quite working over here that I can adjust if I really want to show that I'm focusing on sunglass sales and giving good eye protection?
And I think that's a really good point. I mean, as we start to sort of conclude the discussion here, with regards to understanding why it's important, the awareness, some strategies from a marketing point of view as well as, a sales point of view, but you do need to check in with it and see, is it working? And so I think the KPI discussion there in this instance would be critical to reviewing how it's all going and whether there needs to be pivots or any directional change in that regard and reviewing. So I think that's a really critical component. I think any well-run practice is checking in with that in any case. And so it'll just be something else. If you identify that this is an area of growth or an area you want to focus on as a store, I think, incorporating that review through KPIs and through I guess, other aspects and touch points when it comes to sunglasses.
Yeah, they don't have to be the bad things that people think they are. They don't have to be just about we're measuring and we're telling you how good you are compared to or how bad you are compared to the number we want you to get. They can just be used as a tool to say, is this working? Is what I'm doing actually working? So I think it's really important that that's a consideration, because I think a baseline in any campaign or any change in the practice is always good to have, because then you can see what changes. And it doesn't have to be that you're focusing on one or two things. You can actually just say, if I print out my KPI report up to this date, and then after a month, I do the next month and I compare those numbers, have a look through everything. What am I seeing that's changing? What's going up? What's changing? Because it should eventually be your multiple pairs should go up with this. You know, your prescription sunglass should go up through this. Your sunglass sales should go up through this. Your sunglass ASP should go up through this, because you're actually giving better information to people for that. So I feel that that's a really big component. So I think setting some goals out of this and using the KPIs is really important.
Yeah. What would your 3 key actions for practices be? And considering that they've sort of taken this initiative to say, you know what, I'm going to work on my sunglass sales here, what would be 3 things that you'd say to them?
I would say number 1, actually, if you don't have a customer journey, map a customer journey. I think there's 6 easy steps that you could do in a customer journey. So you can do like first impression, welcome, eye test, dispense, collection, and follow up. Really simple things. You can align to that or make your own. So I would, if you haven't got one, build one, and then actually understand where sunglasses fit into that. Go through all of those areas that you feel is part of your journey. How do I talk about it? How do I market it? You know, how do I promote it? How do I actually have sunglasses as part of all those steps? So that's one thing. The second, I'd say you actually, it is a choice to make sunglasses a focus, just like it's a choice to make dry eyes a focus, or it's a choice to make myopia management a focus. When you do any of those, you actually make changes. You get equipment that suits it, so that you've actually got the latest testing equipment. The optometrist has a passion for it, so they actually do look at it for all the patients that it's, you know, appropriate for. Do the same thing with sunglasses. You know, if you don't have the option to do like an anterior photo where you can actually really have a good look, or you don't have, you know, a good, you know, OCT, whatever it is, the piece of equipment that you've got, if you don't have that now, consider it if you want it to be a focus. Because if you can, the more you can show a patient what you're seeing and explain what you're looking for, the more involved they are, the happier they are at the end. Some of the big comments you get always from patients is when they go home, they don't understand why the cost is what it is, because they really didn't get all that information. But they also feel like they're just sitting there. They're not always being said, you know, can you move in here, pop your chin here? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at this. The reason I'm looking at this is because it'll tell me this. They don't always get that. So if you can do that with the sunglass component, tie it in and explain it, they understand it a bit better. So I would, you know, if you're making it a focus, make it a real focus. And then the third one will be about the goals. It'll take time to do this. You've got to do things like reviewing your stock. You know, is my stock right? Do I need, you know, more options? Is my training right? You know, do I have a lot of really good price points, you know, within it? Am I working with a lab that can give me, you know, options? If I've recognised that there's a specialty, let's say I've got a big bike riding group in my area, does my lab do a sports progressive? If they do that, you know, that's great. If they don't, do you need to consider, you know, what your lens options are as well? Do you need some specialty lenses as well? You know, so think about that stuff. Think about, you know, all the stuff that you need to make it successful, and build a plan, set some timelines, set some goals. That would be the third component that I would say.
Okay. And final question, and I guess it could be almost like a fourth, maybe key action or key point, or any final advice for optometrists looking to strengthen their sunglasses strategy? Is there anything else that you'd say in conclusion? I know we've been through a heap or a lot, so I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't. But if there's anything that we haven't touched on, or any final pieces of advice that you'd want to suggest, let us know.
I think that practices can work 2 general ways. You can either have what I class as a prescribing optometrist who actually tells the assistant what lens down to the index, the lens, the inclusions and stuff, so that person doesn't have to have much of a conversation. So then they're the ones that see all the reps and get all the information. So if somebody out the front gets asked a question, they don't always have the answer. So I'd say if you're that sort of practice, maybe consider doing a bit of training with people out the front, because they do get asked questions. Even though you might be a full hands-on prescribing optometrist and they might not have to do all that, they still get asked questions. If you're the other way and you are a practice that actually has, you know, dispensers or assistants that, do a lot of that end work of the dispensing part. Don't keep yourself out of the conversations, because often what they will do is leave the rep conversations to the team out the front, because they're handling a lot of the lenses and they are making them the lens expert. They're handing the power over when they do that transitions out of the room. But they still need to have an understanding in the room, because they'll get asked a question. So they want to be up to date on the latest options from suppliers as well, so they can answer. So I would say, if there's anything, I would say make sure that no matter which way you work, in the way that you prescribe and the way that your team works, make sure that everyone has some sort of awareness of the process, has training, has a bit of an understanding of what's going on, can help with pricing and general information, so that they actually, can be part of it if they need to be, because then that means you really are making it a focus for your store, because everyone's engaged in it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of content there, a lot of good information, and so I feel like if a store's considering it or a practice is considering it, there are a heap of insights that we've just been through. So if anyone else wants more information, feel free to contact Jo as well.
Yep.
You can leave some comments in the show notes. You are available to do that. But if anyone wants to reach out, we can definitely assist if there are any questions that you have. But Jo, what's the best way people can find you?
Best way to find me, I'll make it, look, the simplest one, because usually when I do this work and I'm coaching, it's through the OptiPro component. So my email is just joanne@optipro.com.au. Very simple. Easiest way to get me. It's nice and simple. Can't get that wrong. Just email me. And then, if you are part of OptiPro, we are having a great campaign around Sunnies in July, August and September. We will have a webinar. So if anyone else is out there wants to be part of it, we'll talk a little bit more about this then.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for it. But, for the OptiPro guys, we'll be giving you a lot more information on this as well. So OptiPro, because, to help you build it up in your practice as well.
Yeah. And those details will be in the show notes also. If anyone wants to check that out, it's there. But Joanne, thanks so much for your time and all your insights. Really, really great. And looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you for joining us on The Focused View, proudly presented by Opticare. It's been our privilege to share the insights and stories that resonate deeply with the eye care community. We hope today's episode has not only inspired you, but also armed you with the practical strategies and innovative ideas to help you enhance your practice and professional journey. If you found value in our conversation, we'd be grateful if you could leave us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. And share this episode with your colleagues. It helps us reach more eye care professionals like you and grow our community of visionaries. Stay connected by subscribing to The Focused View and visiting our website www.thefocusedview.com.au for additional resources and episode summaries. We look forward to your company again in our next episode. Until then, keep focused. I'm Michael Nasser. Bye for now.